All right, friends. So we are talking about the difference between niceness, and kindness. Let's break it down just a little bit. So, if I'm thinking about nice or being or having niceness, it's really that behavior that's driven for approval, approval seeking, self-abandonment, right? Like it is avoiding conflict. Boo. It is over apologizing, saying yes when really you want to say no, right? So that is kind of nice when you start to think about breaking down niceness and kindness. Now, kindness or being kind is really rooted in integrity and empathy, compassion, boundaries, and strength. And so when you think about being kind, you really want to be thinking about what your personal stance is, what your values are, and how you want to show up in the world. One of the things that I like to think about is that being nice is about how others are perceiving you. Being kind is about how you want to show up in the world. Now, we just jumped into this, right? Like, I'm excited about this. I listened to a podcast episode that I cannot think of off the top of my head, but it was a great episode on sort of this being nice, being kind concept, and I wanted to dive into it. So I'm glad to spend a little bit of time with you all talking about niceness, kindness, being nice, being kind, and how it shows up in our world. So let's talk about why we default to nice. As women, especially, we already know this. If you're an avid listener, then you already know that women are taught to be nice, to avoid being too confident, to avoid conflict. We don't want to show up as too much, right? And we tell our young girls not to be too much, too extra, too loud, too fill in the blank, right? And those are things that as a culture, as a society, we have either been taught or we are teaching our young girls. And it is really, again, driven out of fear, approval seeking, self-abandonment, not wanting to be too confident, not wanting to engage in conflict. And so that's why our default really becomes nice. Now, when we are defaulting to nice, what this means is that we're dialing back on confidence to maintain our likability. Now, if you've been around for a minute, you know that I've said I don't really care if people like me, and that is true. On some level, right? I do care if people like me on some level, but at the end of the day, I have let go of that energy. I cannot spend my limited amount of energy that I get every day, every week on worrying about if folks like me. And so when we are dialing back on confidence, we are also doing that to maintain that likability. Now, let's talk about confidence for 2 seconds. When we think about nice, being nice, that means we're giving away our power, right? Our power to set boundaries, our power to use our voice, those sorts of things. When we are being kind, it is restoring that power. It is giving us the ability, the confidence to be powerful in the way that we are showing up in the world, showing up in the situation. And it really grows when you no longer have a need for everyone to like you, right? If you can let go of that piece, right? I'm gonna quote a 90s singer, and I know one of my sisters is about to text me when they hear this, but my give a damn's busted, right? If you can get behind that mindset of not needing folks to show up, and not needing folks to like you, then that confidence continues to grow. And I know I am an example of it. I would say in 2020, pre-2021, I was a pretty confident human. I think I was. Um, but really, when I started to let go of people needing to like me, my confidence started to grow differently. And I can say things differently. I don't guess as much is the key phrase there. But really, I am a person who can say what I need to say in the situations that I need to say it more regularly. And so I encourage you to ask yourself that question. What does kindness look like me today? And where do I need to speak up more? Where do I need to speak up more? What does that kindness look like to me? And pause. If you need to pause this episode, don't forget to unpause. Don't forget to come back to me. But if you need to pause and take a moment, write that down or send yourself a little voice note. Again, if you're driving, please do this at a different time. But for sure, make sure that you take a moment to reflect on those questions. I think that those are really important questions for you to kind of acknowledge where you are and where you want to be. So let's talk about maybe some real life examples, right? Let's say that at work or maybe even at home, someone isn't pulling their weight. Now, the nice thing to do is to be silent. You're gonna overcompensate, right? You're just gonna do it anyways because it's got to get done. But what's really happening there? You're starting to be resentful. I'm the one who always does this. I'm the one who why can't they just pull their own weight, right? Like, we've been there, friends. You've been there at work, you've been there at home, you've been there in volunteer club meetings, right? And so that is a sign of niceness in play. Now, you can be frustrated and still be kind, but I would say that that is maybe an indicator that niceness and confidence, lack of confidence, are at play if those are the kinds of things rattling around in your head, right? Now, in a moment of kindness, the same situation, somebody needs to pull their weight, whether it's at work, it's at home, it's in a volunteer club, it's whatever, is that you're privately checking in with folks. Hey, friend, I noticed that you were not meeting the deadline. How are you? Are things okay? Is there something that we can shift around, right? You're not offering to do it for them, but you're noticing and helping them to maybe reprioritize what they're working on. You're offering that support and you're revisiting some of those shared goals. We had a goal to make sure that our dishes are done every night before we all go to bed, right? And I've noticed that the dishwasher has not been emptied. How can I help? What do we need to do? How do we reprioritize those things? Whatever those things might be. That may or may not be a real life example. I don't know. You all can choose. But being kind and revisiting those goals, revisiting the support that you can offer without doing it yourself is really important. And really probably the biggest part of this piece of kindness is making sure that you're checking in with those folks and doing so privately. It's not in a big public setting, if it's not in front of the kids, maybe it's not in front of the folks at work, but it's in that private setting where you're able to not sugarcoat, right? You're doing it respectfully and you're doing it honestly, but you're having that check-in component to make sure that you all are on the same page. So, right, confidence is really about building and having hard conversations, right? One of my favorite quotes is to say, oh gosh, of course I'm going to lose it because I just put myself on the spot. But say the hard things even if your voice shakes. That is not the exact quote, but I'm going to paraphrase it for a moment, right? Even if your voice shakes. Say it anyways. 20 seconds of bravery. I got an episode out there for that one too. So make sure that you are learning how to and using your maybe it's your hype squad, maybe it's your small circle of friends to practice having that conversation, but learning how to build your confidence through some of those hard conversations. I think what's really important too is that you can start to build that kindness and that confidence through some easy steps, right? You can do a daily check-in with yourself. How can I be kind today? right? Maybe that is a question that you want to wake up and answer every single morning. Maybe that's something that when you're giving yourself a high five in the mirror, thanks Mel Robinson for that, that you can answer that question while you're brushing your teeth or you're driving on the way to work, right? How can I be kind today? And then I would recommend too that you are starting to reclaim your voice. Practice kindness by setting one boundary this week. Boundaries are hard. And remember, boundaries are not about the other people, they're about you. How are you going to set that boundary for yourself? Maybe it's that you're going to take your lunch today. Hint, hint, future episode, maybe topic. Maybe you're going to take your lunch today, and that's your boundary because you need some introvert time. You need to make sure that you're finishing your audiobook because it's really important to you, right? Whatever those boundaries are, they're for you, not for the other person, right? And then maybe you're thinking, Michelle, this feels really cumbersome, really big. I'm not sure that I can manage it. No worries, friend. No worries. You can start small. Say no. You can speak up. You can ask for help. You can lean into your hype squad, right? Those those small nuggets are going to help build your kindness, help build your confidence as you continue to work towards kind, not nice, right? Kind, not nice. So, how do you actually practice being kind instead of nice? Especially when it feels uncomfortable or maybe unfamiliar to other folks. And I've got a couple tips because, of course, I have a couple tips for you. So before you respond, make sure you pause. It is good life tip and life lesson that you make sure you know what you're going to say and how you're going to feel when you're saying it. So ask yourself, am I saying yes because I want to or because I feel obligated to say yes, right? Take a pause and respond from a place of integrity and a place of confidence instead of fear, right? Make sure that you're pausing to think about how you want to respond. My second tip is to practice boundary empathy, right? And so what does that mean, Michelle? That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. I want to make sure that you understand that you can care about someone's feelings without sacrificing your own needs. How many times as women do we give up what we need because we're afraid of how someone is going to receive it and how they're going to emotionally respond to it is that we need. Hey, I need to take a time off. Oh, I was planning to take a time off, or right, like there's a million different ways that we think about how folks might emotionally receive that. Guess what, friends? That's on them. That's not on you on how they choose to emotionally receive the information that you are sharing. And remember that kindness really can hold space for both people's needs and the intended your needs and the receiver's feelings. There is a space for that, but we should make sure we're not owning someone else's feelings as we are exercising those boundaries. You've probably heard this before in your world or on this podcast, but using some both and language, right? So, for example, I care about this project and I need to be clear about what I can realistically take on, right? I want to talk to you about this and I only have 5 minutes to navigate this topic, right? And so, really, that both and mentality, that both and language helps to soften some of that perceived assertiveness, right? But it doesn't give away your power. You are still setting that boundary, you're still setting that parameter for what you need out of the conversation while also acknowledging that it is an important thing, whatever that thing might be, that folks are approaching you about. So make sure you're using that both and language. That was tip number 3. Now, tip number 4 is you can practice this, right? Practice this in situations that are low stake, right? Nobody's losing a job, nobody's losing a friendship or a partner. You can say no or express a different opinion. It may not be no in kind of everyday conversations, right? If you want to go somewhere and you are dying for a Diet Coke, maybe dying is not the right word, but you are a real hankering for a Diet Coke, and you know that the one of the places on the list of lunch options is a Pepsi only, then speak up and say, "Hey, I'd really like to get a Diet Coke. I know that I can't get that there. Can we go to this other one that is also an option for lunch?" Low stakes. Ain't nobody gonna get mad. Well, I don't think so, unless they're Pepsi drinkers, but um it's a low stakes sort of way that you can speak up, you can express your opinion. It builds your kindness muscle so that when it really does count, when you need to speak up and say, I don't agree with the way that we're headed, right? You can use your power, you can use your confidence because you have learned to speak up. You've learned to build in that kind of opposition or the differing idea or opinion. All right. Tip five, last tip, tip five. Remember, my friends, remember your why. Remind yourself that being kind builds trust, builds confidence. Being nice maintains comfort, but really only creates that resentment and pulling your own weight sort of thing. So make sure that when you're thinking about your why, it's not necessarily to avoid conflict, but it's to be able to show up honestly and compassionately and to make sure you're continuing to build a relationship that's important to you, whether that is a work relationship, a home relationship, a friendship, whatever that kind of looks like. So make sure that you are remembering your why as you're choosing to show up kindly, not nicely. And one little kind of closing nugget, if you will, is that being kind is a skill, friends. It's a skill. And like all skills, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. So make sure you're using that muscle, you make sure you're using that skill, and you're showing up kindly in the world. All right. Hopefully, friends, this sat well with you. You're able to take some nuggets away and to really think about the difference between nice and kind, and you're able to start executing and using that kind muscle more and more in your everyday life, to build your confidence, to not throw away your power and your authority in conversations. Friends, this week's affirmations: I'm done apologizing for spending time focused on me. I'm done apologizing for showing up in a kindness mindset, not a nice con mindset. Fill in the blank on this one. This is for you. I'm done apologizing for fill in the blank. Friends, go out there, have the incredible week. I know you're capable of having do all the amazing things. What am I trying to say, friends? You all know this one. If you've listened this far on all my past episodes, go out there, do the incredible things I know you're capable of. And remember to like, follow, share. Anywhere you're listening, make sure you're screenshotting. If there's an episode that you're listening to, this one or in the past, share it with someone who you think might need the message as well. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Give us 5 stars. Give me 5 stars. See, us and me. Give me 5 stars if you like this episode, if you want more on these topics. If you aren't already, make sure you're following on social media. I'm quite literally everywhere and in most locations at done.apologizing. And if you want to be my guest, like all my incredible past guests and some pretty amazing future ones, make sure you fill out the form at the link in my show notes or on any of my social media platforms. And remember, my friends, you're fabulous. You're a badass. You've got this, and I'm here for you.